As the hare in the famous race against the tortoise, I was always confident in my speed and abilities. I had never lost a race before, and I was determined to keep my winning streak alive. But as I began to run, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. My intuition was trying to tell me something, but I was too caught up in the excitement of the race to listen. I raced ahead, laughing and taunting the tortoise as I went. I was sure that I had this race in the bag, and I couldn't wait to rub my victory in the tortoise's face. But as the race went on, I began to feel a sense of unease growing inside me. My intuition was trying to tell me something, but I was too focused on winning to listen. As I ran, I started to realize that there was more to this race than just winning. There were hidden motives at play, and I had a feeling that I was being used for someone else's gain. Despite my reservations, I kept running. I was determined to win, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get there. But as I ran, I began to feel more and more superficial and hollow. I was caught up in the excitement of the race, but I wasn't really connected to what I was doing. I was ignoring my intuition, and it was starting to take a toll on me. As the race went on, I became more and more confused. I wasn't sure what was driving me or why I was even running. I was starting to experience cognitive dissonance, and I didn't know how to resolve it. As I struggled to make sense of my feelings, I realized that I had been ignoring my intuition in other areas of my life as well. I had been hiding my true self from my lover, trying to fit into a certain image of what I thought they wanted. But in doing so, I had only succeeded in feeling isolated and disconnected. I didn't know who I was anymore, and I was starting to lose touch with my true self. As I ran, I realized that I had been lacking important information about the race and my role in it. I had been so focused on winning that I hadn't stopped to consider the bigger picture. But it was too late to turn back now. I was committed to the race, and I had to see it through to the end. As I approached the finish line, I knew that I had made a mistake. I had ignored my intuition, and it had cost me dearly. I had lost touch with my true self and my values, and I had nothing to show for it. As I crossed the finish line, I knew that I had lost more than just the race. I had lost myself along the way, and I wasn't sure how to get back. But as I looked back on the race, I knew that it had been a turning point for me. It had taught me the importance of listening to my intuition and staying true to myself, no matter what the cost. And it had set me on a path of self-discovery and growth that would continue for the rest of my days. As I walked away from the race, I knew that I had a lot of work to do. I had to learn how to listen to my intuition and follow its guidance, even when it was difficult. I also knew that I had to start being honest with myself and others about my true feelings and desires. I had been hiding behind a facade of superficiality and false motives, and it had only served to isolate me and make me feel disconnected from the world. But I was determined to change, and I was ready to do whatever it took to get back on track. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face the challenge head-on. Over the next few weeks, I began to explore different techniques for tapping into my intuition and staying connected to my inner self. I meditated, prayed, and journaled, trying to get in touch with my deepest desires and values. I also began to work on being more honest and open with my lover, trying to build a deeper and more authentic connection. I was determined to be myself, even if it meant being vulnerable and exposing my true self to the world. As I continued on my journey, I began to feel a sense of clarity and purpose that I had been missing for so long. I was no longer confused or lost, and I knew exactly what I wanted out of life. I also began to feel more connected to the world around me, and I realized that my intuition had been trying to guide me all along. I just hadn't been listening. As I looked back on the race between the tortoise and myself, I knew that it had been a turning point in my life. It had taught me the importance of listening to my intuition, staying true to myself, and not being swayed by external forces. And it had set me on a path of self-discovery and growth that I would follow for the rest of my days. As I continued to grow and learn, I found myself drawn to new spiritual practices and ways of understanding the world. I became fascinated by the concept of a higher power and the role it plays in our lives. And I spent countless hours in meditation and contemplation trying to understand the mysteries of the universe. I also began to explore different techniques for tapping into my intuition and staying connected to my inner self. I found that the more I practiced these techniques, the clearer my inner guidance became. I also began to pay more attention to the subtle signals and messages that the world was sending me. I learned to trust my instincts and to follow my heart, even when it took me in unexpected directions. As I grew more in tune with my intuition, I found that it was guiding me towards new opportunities and experiences that I never would have considered before. I was no longer held back by fear or self-doubt, and I was able to embrace new challenges with confidence and grace. I also found that my intuition was a valuable tool in my relationships, both romantic and otherwise. I learned to listen to my inner voice and follow its guidance, even when it meant standing up for myself or setting boundaries with others. And as I looked back on the race between the tortoise and myself, I knew that it had been a turning point in my life. It had taught me the importance of listening to my intuition and following my heart, and it had set me on a path of growth and self-discovery that I would follow for the rest of my days.